Welcome to the Hall of Echoes of the Grand Library of the city of Zahra. This is where reports arrive of discoveries, expeditions, and events already shaping the world. Some are confirmed, others survive only through witness. I am Idris Nahir, Keeper of Echoes. I mark what is known and I name what is uncertain, because silence is also a choice. These are the matters before Zahra. Welcome, one and all, to the Grand Library of Zahra. As always, it is a pleasure to house all of you within these hollowed walls for an afternoon of stimulating conversation. Much has been going on within our great city over the past few weeks. You might have noticed an influx of refugees from the Yinthu Tribe coming through the streets and acclimating to our city. Well, today's symposium is all about them. They are not an unknown tribe to many of the peoples in Zahra. The news of their ancestral temples being ravaged by Mirelia's infection surprised us all. They've been wandering in droves through the desert to find sanctuary here. Of course we have welcomed them. The Hollowed have been working tirelessly to ensure the refugees are fed and housed to the best of their ability. The kinship of the Chimes of Harmony and the Adder's Hand have been working with them closely to help them obtain the necessities they need without having to part with any of their heirlooms and relics. As we all know, there are many merchants who are more than willing to happily prey upon the destitute as they wander our city under these circumstances. I am not naming any peoples, but I will allow you to draw your own conclusions. What is so fascinating about the Yinthu Tribe is the manner of relics they create. Thymagora is a very curious art form in my eyes. It can be used in any number of ways. The Yinthu happen to use it to create relics that house wound-shifting spirits. I've had the privilege of questioning a few of their Thymagorists and learning about the ways in which they procure the spirits. It is common practice to use wound-shifting spirits by our wound rites, shifting wounds between consenting patients. But many of us do not understand how they are created. Over countless generations, they have perfected a way to generate and bind the spirits of steppe antelope through strategic hunting. In order for a spirit to have the power to shift wounds, the creature must die by protecting another. The Yinthu have mastered a reverent and honorable hunting technique to create these circumstances before the antelope's deaths. Many others have attempted to mimic these techniques, but none have succeeded. We don't know exactly how many wound-right relics they've created over the years, but they have been selling them to Zahra and other cities for generations. Now that their lands are infected, many peoples are quickly jumping at the opportunity to scavenge these lands for their own wound-right relics. Many realize the importance of having these within our own control. Without the constant production of them, at some point in time the relics might become rare, a commodity that will increase the price of medical care greatly. The Hammerbound, for that reason, have funded their own expeditions into the tribe's territories to obtain wound-right relics for themselves. The Hammerbound are some of our most ferocious fighters, and while we might think of them as being made of steel, they bleed as easily as the rest of us. Well, maybe not quite so. I'd surmise that I would injure rather easier than some of the Hammerbound we'll be reading about today. The Grand Library is working in conjunction with the River Wardens to devise a taxation on wound-right relics being brought in from the Janatun Steppes. Of course, the Dar al-Nar are more than happy to collect more taxes. But the Guardians of the Vault are interested in using the taxes to pay for medical care for wounded pain-eaters that have been abandoned, or for making medical care more available to the poor. The Guardians are also quite curious about the impact these relics will have on medical care within the city. Will it make it more available and affordable to have an influx of these relics within our walls? I hope so, but the future remains to be seen. The Stormshapers Collective is capitalizing on this new influx of interested spirits. Before now, they haven't been particularly valuable from a monetary sense. But with so many searching for them and attempting to collect as many as possible, their value is bound to increase. This has caught the attention of both the Adder's Hand and Banu Asrar. So I wish the Stormshapers Collective the best of luck in defending against those two if they wish to steal them for their own purposes. Perhaps one of the most interesting aspects of this new development within our city comes down to the Veiled Chamber. Being seated in such positions of power in this city, the aristocratic members of the chamber have counteracted many of the attempts at their lives through the use of wound-right relics. Many of the chamber members have Pain Eater families as servants. These families are bound to them entirely for the purpose of passing the red that might debilitate the aristocrats. It might sound barbaric, and I suppose in some way it is, but these families do live good lives with the exception of taking the occasional trauma. We've seen many of them honored in halls with other nobles. But now that wound-right relics are becoming something of a rarity, these families have come under attack. It is undoubtedly a way to target the Veiled Chamber. They've been long untouchable within the walls of the city, and now there is a vulnerability being exploited by the Banu Asrar. The Chamber has reacted to these attacks by moving their Pain Eater families into hiding. Somewhere in this city, they're being cloistered away, and the Banu Asrar has offered generous rewards to those with information about them. As I've mentioned, many peoples are interested in these relics, the Guardians of the Vault included. So today we will be reading journals from these two expeditions. The Company of the Light Step, funded by the Guardians, and the Company of the Spirit Chasers, funded by the Hammerbound. Two organizations with, at different times, opposing views, but nonetheless an exciting tale of adventure to our rapidly unraveling world. Company of the Spirit Chasers, Journal of Dakis Makarioi of the Hammerbound. Ari insisted that the Hammerbound create expeditions into the unraveling Janatun Steppes to obtain wound-right relics of our own. I'll admit at first I was hesitant. Her insistence was founded on the ideology we are among some of the most competitive in Zahra. While our people has many goals, protecting the city from raiders and coordinated attacks, while working against the unraveling, is of the utmost importance. How are we supposed to do that if we are slaves to the machination of greedy wound-rights and flesh-menders of the city? Any injury we obtain during our expedition, training, or fights to protect the city could be lethal. We need Pain Eaters. We need our strong on the front lines of every battle upholding our mission. Of all the tribes to succumb to the unraveling, I fear that perhaps the Yinthu could be one of the most detrimental. The wound-right artifacts they create are one of a kind. Without them, we would have lost many of our most illustrious warriors. So, Ari talked me into assembling a team. As we were discussing the team we would put together, we thought it best to have as many Hammerbound among our ranks as possible. So bringing Zimra was an easy decision. She'll make a fine shield captain. Provisions should be relatively easy, so we figured we would save Fulgurite by combining that role with mine as leader. I sent a request to the Illuminated Petal for a field scholar, and they suggested a woman named Mira who seems fit to the task. I would prefer to keep the company small. It's more manageable that way. But Ari informed me of a secondary priority of this mission, which is to save mycelium from a garden the Yinthu's own gardeners of the mycelial memories have cultivated before it succumbs to the unraveling. So now we have Machine traveling alongside us. He is a small gnome who I doubt has ever seen battle in his life, but he insisted there is nobody better to handle the sacred mycelial memories than himself. I suppose we will see about that. We leave the city at first light. I must admit I am eager to see how this will play out. Journeying through Morvac to get to the Janatun Steppes should be eventful in and of itself. But I feel between myself and Zimra, we are prepared for any confrontation the Morvaci might launch. Company of the Spirit Chasers, Journal of Mishin Pirba of the Gardeners of Mycelial Memories. I've spent my entire life within the walls of Zahra, born and raised to tend to the gardens. witnessing anything within the walls so that my memories will once be added to the ever-growing network when I am laid to rest with my ancestors in the garden. I've studied the mycelium since I was a child. I've dedicated my life to the fungi growing in the gardens, and I couldn't be happier about that. But the prospect of traveling from Zahra all the way to these unraveling temples in the Janatun Steppes to harvest new memories and bring them to the city is exciting. I must admit that I have dreamed of adventure myself. It's common among our people that there is a time when we crave our own stories, not just those happening around us. Our lives are dedicated to sacred witnessing and remembering. At a certain point, it feels like I am not living a life of my own, but this journey could change that. Ari from the Hammerbound told me a bit about the mycelium I'll be harvesting. Apparently, like us, the Yinthu Tribe has been laying their dead to rest in the gardens, allowing the mycelium to harvest their memories. I knew there were other gardeners throughout the world, but this will be my first opportunity to speak with them. I can only begin to imagine the tales of heroism and love and loss that these mushrooms might carry. They might look at me and think I am naive, and to some extent they might be right. But my mind is keen enough to know that it isn't out of their duty to the gardens and memory of our unraveling world that they bring me to harvest these fungi. They're hoping we might uncover something that can help them create more of these wound-bearing spirits. Of course, if that information is available, I will help them. It would be information to share with all of Zahra. The spirits are exceptionally helpful, and we would not wish to hoard that to ourselves. That is the goal of our organization. In the morning, we will leave the city, and I will set off on an exciting adventure of my own. Company of the Spirit Chasers. Journal of Mira Shub of the Illuminated Petal. After weeks of travel, we arrive at the edges of Morvac. After the recent blockade of the river, I was expecting a tumultuous arrival. The Illuminated Petal have been crafting narratives about the fight between Zahra and the Morvaci forces for weeks. It is with grand narratives of rotten, living ships and an undead army in mind as I approach the city walls. But surprisingly, it seems Morvac is not much different from Zahra as I thought. Upon arrival, we set out to camp for the night. Our noble Hammerbound leaders were unsure of what we might encounter if we went into the city. It was suggested that we try to go around, perhaps even moving through the mountains to avoid the barbarians we assumed would swarm out and attack us at any moment. But as we set up tents and we pulled rations from stores, we were approached by the toll collector. The man did not look like an undead warrior described to me, just a kinfolk like any one of us, albeit much more battle-hardened and with a certain bloodlust in the eyes. It was surprising, but it would be hard to assume that all of Morvac is a city of undeath. Not entirely impossible, considering the Veiled Chamber has their own undead council in the Black Dais. This is arcana I can't begin to understand, but it exists within our world nonetheless. I listened carefully as Dakis spoke to the man. I was surprised that we would be entering the city with no opposition whatsoever, but the Morvaci insisted there was a toll to pay for guidance through the walls. At some discussion, it was agreed that we would pay the toll to get to the other side of the city. Without paying the toll, Morvac would have no reason to allow us to pass through. They might be keen on the idea of slaughtering us, just for the fun of it. The toll collector made us pack up our camp and follow them through the city immediately. They promised us that we could make camp on the other side for the night, and we were in no position to disobey, so we did exactly that. Even though I was terrified seeing just how militant the toll keeper was, there was part of me excited about seeing Morvac with my own eyes. Not many can enter the city and live to tell the tale. Morvac likes to keep their secrets close. As we got to the walls, the toll collector gave us blindfolds and demanded we put them on. The Hammerbound, of course, fought back, but they eventually conceded when they were threatened to be killed on the spot by archers standing on the wall. All four of us put our blindfolds and we were led through the city. I tried my best to listen for any signs of life. I heard the occasional conversation in their own tongue, but I could not make out anything of importance. After 30 minutes of walking, we were on the other side of the city, being pushed through doors with our blindfolds pulled off. The group of us looked at each other and began laughing nervously, realizing what we just encountered. We could have easily lost our lives, but I imagine the tollkeepers have earned quite a hefty sum of fulgurite considering the influx of people looking for these relics. Even though we lost quite a bit to the toll, moving through the city saved us a substantial amount of time. Without having to go through the mountains or around the walls themselves, we can get to the temples much faster and hopefully beat any other expeditions that are on their way. Company of the Light Step, Journal of Dina Kagan of the Guardians of the Vault. Everyone is so focused on these wound-rite relics within the ruins that they've overlooked much of the history of the Yinthu Tribe. They have many more artifacts hidden away within those unraveling temples that could be of far more importance than these spirits. But I suppose this is to the advantage of the Guardians of the Vault. With everyone else preoccupied with the wound-rite relics, they're less focused on any of the others. By the time our expedition reaches the temple, I don't expect many of the wound-rite relics to remain, but I do expect there to be a great amount of others for us. Warden Pania sent us out as soon as she realized how advantageous this positioning might be for us. With the income from the taxation on the relics, a lot less of the well-funded peoples like the Adder's Hand simply can't afford to travel quickly to these temples. The less we have to contend with their self-righteousness, the better. These relics could be very beneficial to the Guardians, as well as Zahra as a whole, because we want as few people knowing about the other artifacts as possible. I'm traveling with a very small company. The Company of the Light Step, as we have been named, consists of myself, of Yanina from the Kinship of the Chimes of Harmony as our shield captain, and Eyal Shalit, a noble with the Royal Society of Zahra. He knows something of the artifacts already, but is more interested in any documentation of the knowledge the Yinthu Tribe held. He believes they have some sort of system for predicting celestial events that would be important for the Royal Society. The Yinthu are a very advanced tribe, having been around for many generations, but I'm unsure if he'll find exactly what he is looking for. Regardless, we have promised him our aid in exchange for his knowledge of the region. Company of the Light Step, Journal of Yanina Wind Dancer of the Kinship of the Chimes of Harmony. The journal from Zahra has been interesting. Well, I suppose that might not be one of the best words to use. We were going to have to pass through Morvac based on some of the reports Dina received. Because of that, we were prepared for our toll. I did not want to be blindfolded and walk through the city the way we were, but we did not have much of a choice. Eyal has been talking nearly non-stop the entire time we've been walking. Normally, I wouldn't mind conversation, but it's beginning to grate on me. Nearly every step we stop, I have to ground myself by reminding myself of my training. I try to find a place of calmness within myself, and it reminds me why I am doing this. The wound-rite relics are important for the city. Many people need them, wealthy and poor alike, and I'm going to retrieve as many as I can. After we camped on the other side of Morvac for the night, we were ready to head for the Janatun Steppes. I was walking ahead of the party, as I typically do, to keep an eye out for any danger we might encounter. I spotted a group of Yinthu wandering down the hills of the mountain. They had as many belongings as they could carry strapped to their backs and exhausted looks on their faces. We stopped them to attempt to converse. They speak a language unknown to us, so Dina was able to use grammaturgy to create a glyph that allowed us to speak freely. I was surprised to see the Yinthu were hostile. They were angry with us before we could even speak, telling us that they were not interested in staying in their lands if we had any desire to try and convince them. To say that all of us were confused would be an understatement. We don't know why anyone would insist that a group would stay within unraveling lands, especially considering so many other peoples in Zahra are vying for a chance to retrieve these relics themselves. When we inquired more, they told us about the people like us, from Zahra, who came to them and said it was the noble thing to do. they needed to die with their own lands. I don't know who might have said that, but it's concerning. The infection that plagues all of Aporia is a problem many are working to solve. It is only by sticking together and helping others that we fight back against this and reclaim our lands. I plan to speak to others among the higher ranks of the kinship about this. Perhaps they know more of who would be encouraging this behavior. It's my belief that all of us need to keep a close eye on. Company of the Light Steppe, Journal of Eyal Shalit, Scholar of the Royal Society of Zahra. My father was nervous about sending me on an expedition when I suggested that I join the Company of the Light Steppe. He is not a member of the Royal Society, so I don't expect him to understand my need to go. It's not some childish desire to see the world. I want to understand it. I have been fascinated with traveling tribes for some time. There are so many nomadic peoples, just like the Yinthu, that wander between locations in Aporia and see so much more than anyone in the society could imagine. They have such unique understandings of the world around us too. This tribe in particular has created a method of predicting celestial events without any form of arcana. I need to understand what this is. I'm sure there must be some documentation or information about it within these temples, and I intend to find everything I can. Every important piece of information they couldn't take with them is going to return to the Royal Society with me. To lose scientific information like this to the infection would be a travesty. I can't allow that to happen. The journey might be dangerous, but this is a cause I am happy to risk myself for. I have interviewed many of the tribe members within the city. They've told me much about the area and routes they would typically take while moving between the seasons. I believe there is no one in Zahra who has a better understanding of their lifestyle than me. That's the only way I was able to convince Dina to bring me on this expedition. Speed is an issue for any expedition in search of relics like this. We are well aware that we are not the only ones out here, but with my knowledge, I can take us through shortcuts in the mountains that will lead us to temples in very little time. Yanina is strong and not too fond of me, I can tell, but I think with her martial ability as well as Dina's grammaturgy, the three of us can get through any obstacle in our way. Company of the Spirit Chasers, Journal of Mishin Pirba of the Gardeners of Mycelial Memories. We had been walking for hours after leaving our campsites near Morvac when we encountered another expedition. The group of them were completely disheveled, all of their stores gone and wandering towards Morvac with nothing in their pockets. No money to pay the toll collector and no supplies to go around the city on their own. Dakis told us that we were not to share with them because it could be a death sentence of our own, but I could not help myself. I shared some of my own rations and water supplies, knowing that I would be going without. I suppose I am much smaller than all of the others, and I don't quite need as much food. I would hate to see somebody suffering. And going through the mountains to avoid Morvac without any sustenance would all but be a death sentence. They spoke to me about what they encountered. They went to the temples in the Janatun Steppes and struggled greatly with the infection that seemed to move them around in unpredictable ways, almost always benefiting the spirits protecting the area. Yes, they said there are spirits guarding. They lost their own shield captain to a battle with spirits guarding a room with relics. They were only able to obtain some when another one of them snuck inside during the fight. But that isn't what hurt them so badly today. They were on their way back with a few relics in hand and the belongings they arrived with. Their travel was intercepted by a group of marauders who robbed them blind and broke nearly everything they had. They took their fulgurite, every relic on their person, and even personable valuables that had nothing to do with the expedition. The company did not stay long to talk as they wanted to move as quickly as possible. They wouldn't have much energy traveling back and they wanted to make as much headway as possible before sunset. As the four of us continued towards the temples, we theorized about what we might encounter. It was a unanimous agreement that we think the Adder's Hand might have something to do with this. They want to preserve the ownership of relics and would be militant against people if needed. But it's our understanding that the Banu Asrar have also been trying to obtain as many as possible, and they're certainly not above thievery. Even with what we saw, I feel confident moving forward. We have 2 Hammerbound in our expedition. Anyone from the Banu Asrar or Adra's hands would think twice before accosting them. Company of the Spirit Chasers, Journal of Dakis Makarioi of the Hammerbound. We knew we were getting close to the temples before we could see them. The terrain seemed to shift all at once in completely unreasonable ways. The first sign we encountered was a large stone that appeared to be part of a temple suspended in mid-air. We did not spend long investigating it because we deemed it potentially dangerous. Plant life seemed to shift the further we moved towards miasma of constantly altered reality. Plants that we would deem normal were nowhere in sight. It almost looks as if we're on some alien planet with oversized weeds and flowers sprouting from the ground. We've heard stories about how captivating some of these plants can be and how dangerous they are. All of us managed to steer clear of them without issue. The air was thicker than normal, like a humidity that would never let up, punctuated by a shimmering purple haze. An eerie silence fell over the world. We did not hear any animals, no wind. Even our footsteps seemed muffled as we walked. But somehow, the most surprising part of it all was seeing Zahrans camped within the infected areas. The Circle of 1,000 Treads and the Ruwad al-Majur both alongside each other, aiding each other. Historically, they have not always been on the same side of arguments within the city. But here, both of them seem to have decided to work towards a common cause of attempting to stave off further infection. We spoke with them briefly. They told us they knew of the temples and where we might find relics within the walls. The fact that these 2 peoples were sharing this information with us made me feel uneasy, like perhaps I was walking into a trap. But they insisted this would be a time where all of Zahra should work together due to the everyday importance of the artifacts that could be lost. But most importantly, they told us what we should expect within the temple. They have attempted to explore it and use their respective abilities to ease the way for companies attempting to move through. But even though they have already worked hard at that, there is still much to uncover. The expedition we encountered on the journey mentioned spirits protecting rooms, and their story was corroborated again. It seems the bound spirits are those of the Yinthu Tribe who have passed on and been chained to the temples. They're fierce warrior spirits that don't understand anything other than the mission of protecting the tribe under their culture. They have been hostile toward every outsider who's attempted to enter the temple so far. They have been unable to change the shifting physics of the temple. It seems that moving through is unreliable at best, and one misstep could lead anyone down a path they did not intend on taking. We were advised to walk slowly and cautiously, careful to keep track of every place we step. The eastern part of the temple is all that has been stabilized by their joint effort. It might be the safest part to traverse, but because of that, any relics there are likely diminished. We'll make a camp for the night now, but when we enter we might have to consider venturing deeper into the temple, into uncharted areas. Company of the Light Step, Journal of Dina Kagen of the Guardians of the Vault. As we arrived at the temple, we saw another company camping for the night. The Company of the Spirit Chasers, they call themselves. Of course, there are members I recognize. 2 Hammerbound also work within the confines of the library and a noble. Perhaps that was the most surprising part of it all, even considering the Circle and the Ruwad working together. I suppose we should have expected another expedition to be here. With the race to get here and obtain as many relics as possible, it makes sense, but I think all of us felt the mounting pressure of it. I don't know if it will come to this, but I certainly hope any rivalry does not end in violence. As of right now, we do have a common goal, but even with that in mind, there are valuables within these walls that all of us desire. After setting up our camp, Eyal and I walked around the temple to try and survey the land before entering. It can be difficult to anticipate what awaits us within an infected zone, but we try to be prepared nonetheless. Eyal spotted the strange carving before I did. He took an etching of it in his journal, but neither of us could recognize it. It appeared to be an open book with a sun rising behind it, but between both objects was some sort of storm. It was carved into the stone and glowing through the use of grammaturgy. Both of us are in agreement that this is some kind of signal, perhaps a place marker. But without being able to identify the sigil, we can't understand its true purpose. The Circle and the Major members attempting to stabilize the temple seem surprised by its presence too. It's something both of us plan to look back into within the walls of Zahra. None of the opposing expedition were keen on making a small talk. The exception was the gnome. He approached us as we gathered around our fire and informed us of his mission. There are burial mounds around the temple with mycelium that he intends to harvest to bring back to the gardens in Zahra. We promised to aid him if at all possible. It's doubtful that many expeditions have gardeners with them, and these mushrooms are of importance. We promised him that if we have extra room, we will carry back any mycelium he harvests for us. As soon as the sun rose, we pack our tents and plan on making our way into the temple before any others. Of course, we discovered the other company had the same goal in mind. We agreed to search different directions to stay out of each other's way. After walking into the temple for the very first time, I realized how difficult this will be. None of us could even plan where we would end up with each step we took. The first few steps Janina took along the stone were fine, but as she moved, every new space seemed to have a different rule. All of us were shocked to see her step forward, her feet anchored on the ground in front of us, and her torso 6 paces ahead hovering over the ground. All of us thought, for a moment, she might be dead. We could not quite grasp what we were seeing, but then her legs moved another step forward and her torso was occupying the same space once more. All of us went through the exact same step and it happened to us too. At the end of it, there was a giddy amusement seeing it. It happened many times in many different ways. Sometimes she would take a step and it would turn her around completely. Once she was walking on the ceiling, her hair completely in place as if gravity itself had shifted. But even aside from the strange physics of the passageways, there's a thickness in the air that all of us feel. It's different, almost claustrophobic with a strange sweet smell. To think that this is a part of the cosmos we are trying to maneuver through is unbelievable. We reached the end of the passageway without anyone being injured and decided to take a break. We know now how important documenting every phase of the unraveling is, so that's what we are doing. We are close to a room now. We can't see what is hidden beyond the darkness inside, but we're hopeful we can find what we are looking for. Company of the Light Stab, Journal of Eyal Shalit, Scholar of the Royal Society of Zahra. My heart was beating hard enough that I could hear it in my ears as we approached the room. We truly had no way of knowing if this was the very same room that we were warned that took another company's shield cap. From our understanding, the spirits were never actually defeated. But as we stepped forward, all being cautious in our movements, we realized that it was. Janina was first, taking a step toward the threshold of the room that immediately shifted from inky blackness to blindingly bright. Torches with blazing white light lit along every part of the room. Each of us had to blink several times to see clearly, temporarily stunned by the sudden light. When the world came back into focus, I saw relics in the room, but there were far more of them than I ever imagined. There seemed to be no discernible organization to them, but I saw books and scrolls alongside them that quickened my pulse. I practically felt myself salivating over the knowledge that must be held within those books. I could hardly contain myself as I stepped across the threshold. I felt hands grasping for me as if to stop me, but it was too late. I heard a war cry from my right and turned to see a large spirit wielding an ethereal sword that was just as terrifying as any Hammerbound's. I screamed and fell back, crashing into a stone pedestal. I knocked it over, the relic sitting atop, crashing to the ground. It was on the floor that I noticed the body of the dead shield cap. Blood was pooled around him and his mouth hung open in a silent scream. I felt my blood run cold as the realization that I might actually die upon this mission gripped me. The spirit lunged for me, but before it could reach me, Janina was between us. I heard her before I saw her, the chimes on her armor ringing with every step she took. I scrambled to my feet while the battle ensued. Watching her fight was nothing short of magnificent. Even with the chimes on the joints of her armor, you could not anticipate where she would move next. The spirit focused its attack on her, its blade moving soundlessly through the air. The fight itself almost inspired me to forget everything I've learned about the world and study Thymagora. How the spirit was such a fascinating opponent. As it moved, it was completely incorporeal in our world, but it would strike Yanina's blade. I could hear the sound of metal on metal like it was real. If I were to have reached out and touched it, my hand would have gone right through it, but it seems as though the spirit's intentions helped manifest physically, if only to protect this room. No blows that Yanina dealt seemed to do anything. I understood why the previous shield captain fell to the spirit. How could you even win against an opponent you cannot injure? Most of what Yanina was able to do was slash at it pointlessly and block any blows it tossed her way. I could understand how anyone, even a fighter as incredible as her, would grow tired after a while and fall victim to the spirit. I realized you would not be able to fight a spirit like this without Arcana. Thankfully, Dina was with us. As Yanina continued to block most of the blows thrown her way, Dina was frantically etching a glyph on parchment. When she was done, she used it and it sent the spirit flying backward. Just by the look on its face, I could see that what she did worked, and it injured it, but it wasn't enough to destroy it. She was left working to create another while Yanina fought off the spirit even longer. I could feel myself growing worried as I saw her slowing down, calling for Dina to hurry. I wondered if I should have just grabbed some of the relics and ran because I didn't think we would be able to defeat the spirit. But then we heard footsteps down the hall. I looked to see the expedition we met last night taking the route we marked toward us. The Hammerbound approached with their weapons drawn, wielding martial ability alongside grammaturgy simultaneously. They burst into the room and began fighting back too. They joined Yanina, their blows capable of dealing damage to the spirit. The three of them, with Dina finishing her etching of another glyph, were able to strike down the spirit, leaving the room quiet once more. In the aftermath, all of us sat on the ground in silence, catching our breaths. We looked at each other, realizing we were in a room filled with relics and artifacts, both of our expeditions hungry for them all. Company of the Spirit Chasers, Journal of Zimra Mats of the Hammerbound. As we sat around the room, I felt a sickness in my stomach. The trade for relics within the city is extremely lucrative. Expeditions travel all over Aporia and risk their lives because they know the right item being sold to the right buyer could change their lives forever. It wouldn't be unheard of for violence to break out between opposing expeditions. We were in a room filled with relics. The Yinthu Tribe truly worked hard to create all of these, so it's no wonder they couldn't take them all when they fled. Truly, there were plenty for all of us, but I could see each of us thinking the same thing. If there was one artifact we wanted, we wouldn't be afraid of fighting for it. With the help of Dina, we used grammaturgy to identify some of the relics. The noble on their expedition began looking through the books for information, completely uninterested about the wound-bearing artifacts everyone else seemed keen on. A majority of the artifacts in the room were wound-right spirits. Realizing that, I actually felt at ease. There were more than either of our expeditions could carry, so I thought we might be able to divide them up as we saw fit. But as we continued to identify them, Dina seemed intent on finding something else. She couldn't explain what it was. It was clear to me that she had her own personal mission aside from the wound-bearing relics. I was curious, but the relics were primary goal for our team. Eventually, she found something that seemed to cause her great excitement, and she promptly put it in her bag without discussion. I considered questioning her about it and suggesting that's not quite fair she gets to claim it without talking about it with us. But I thought better of it. Besides, both of us work in the library, and I have few connections within the Guardians of the Vault that might be able to tell me if it's of importance to myself or the Hammerbound. Company of the Spirit Chasers, Journal of Mishin Pirba of the Gardeners of Mycelial Memories. We spent hours in the room with the relics, identifying them and filling our bags. I felt mine grow heavier and heavier with each passing second and was too afraid to speak. What about the mycelium? That was my purpose in coming. Of course, the journey has been exciting, and the battle between the warriors on both of our expeditions and that fearsome spirit was incredible to behold. But this tribe is much more than these relics. They have a history and traditions that we'll never be able to understand, but will someday be lost to time if we don't collect the mycelium. Eventually, as everyone's bags were nearly full to bursting, I spoke up. I remind them of the burial mounds. It seems every single one of them forgot about it as they saw the value of the relics in front of them and nothing else. It was disheartening. I told them that this was part of the mission. The Hammerbound requested that these mycelium be brought back. I thought I would be able to reason with them more if I called into question their duty. Last night, I spoke to Dina. She promised to help me. She told me that if I could harvest mycelium for them, they would save room and carry it back. But as I stood in front of them and told them what we stood to lose, she seemed uninterested. All she could focus on were the relics. Perhaps I am a little jaded now after this conversation, but I realize that the Guardians of the Vault aren't as interested in history as I might have thought. Yes, they are a people of the library, but their entire goal is to collect artifacts. The history of the people these relics and artifacts belong to is of less importance than the item itself. The only person who seemed keen on helping me was Mira. She took some of the wound-right artifacts out of her bag and promised to fill the rest with mycelium. I would expect as a member of the Illuminated Petal, she understands how important stories are. After we were through with the room, we traced our way back through the temple. We left and saw the Circle and Major members outside, almost surprised to see all of us coming out. We weren't entirely unscathed, but we did not lose anyone to the spirit we fought. They directed us to the burial mounds, and I was amazed at how the unraveling had shifted them. More of the strange new plants had sprouted up around the area, but many of the mycelium themselves were hanging mid-air with their roots exposed, practically thrumming with the miasma of energy surrounding us. As I took a step toward them, I reached out to touch the roots. I could feel the energy moving through my veins as it transferred the memory to me. I saw flashes of traveling, singing, a child being born, that same child growing into an adult and herding antelope with bow and arrow to harvest their spirits. I touched another and saw glimpses of sickness, felt cold in my bones, and watched the Yinthu gathering around the burial mound to say goodbye. I realized I want to take as many of these stories with me as possible. With Mira's help, we gathered as much of the mycelium as possible. The ones floating in the air were easy to pull away, but I focused on some of the larger ones still buried in the ground. I harvested them with care, knowing what they held within. We weren't able to leave with as many as I'd hoped. It breaks my heart thinking that so many other expeditions will come through here but ignore these entirely. How many stories are going to be lost? How much of the Yinthu culture will be gone forever? I feel angry thinking about it now. All of the great peoples in our city prioritize artifacts under the guise of wanting to understand the world. The way I see it, we understand it through history. I think they're all focusing on the wrong things. Company of the Light Step, Journal of Yanina, Kinship of the Chimes of Harmony. Spirits were high for the most part as we returned to Zahra. The journey back was easier than the journey there. Instead of traveling back through Morvac to pay an exorbitant toll and also risk losing the artifacts we fought so hard for, we opted to move through the mountains. Eyal seemed to think he knew a good route. Everything was going smoothly until we encountered our own group of marauders. It wasn't surprising. The company of the Spirit Chasers told us about the group they encountered who face off against them. We fought them off with ease. They weren't expecting a response as vigorous as they got between myself and two Hammerbound. Most of their group ran, but I managed to capture one to question. I heard Zimrad laugh as the man claimed to be a member of the Adder's Hand. After leaving there, we made it back to Zahra in a day and a half's journey. The taxes to get back into the city were high, but we had to pay them nonetheless. We parted ways with the company of the Spirit Chasers and thanked them for their help. We did not intend to be joining forces with anyone else, but I'm glad that we did. If they had not been there, things might have turned out much differently. Eyal had no interest in any of the artifacts we obtained. He was more interested in the books he found in the room, which had a lot of information to uncover about the tribe. I could see how eager he was to begin working. Dina let me keep many of the wound-right relics. The kinship of the Chimes of Harmony is a martial people, so we can always use things like this. But she happily left with all of the other relics she obtained. I know that in due time they'll be sealed away in the vault of the library, exactly where she wants them to be. And there you have it. Two companies coming together for a common cause in the end. I can honestly say this is not a story we see very often, and I was pleased at the camaraderie that formed between these groups. Perhaps I am somewhat biased as the Great Library had so much involvement, but I was absolutely riveted by this. Perhaps I found the journals of Machine Pirba to be some of the most impactful. He has a point, I suppose. Many of the peoples in our city, especially those of the library, seek to understand the world we live in. It is our belief that only by understanding can we fix what is broken. Many of the relics we scour Aporia for give us hope that we can better understand through the tools they offer. But are we losing something by prioritizing them? I'll be the first to admit that we don't often think of the places they come from. Rather, we focus on what they can do for us. Maybe we should be focused more on the stories of the people rather than the relics. There is importance to these stories. Our world is unraveling by the day. New areas are infected and people are forced from their homes into the safety of cities like Zahra and Rumara. They had to leave their way of life behind entirely and assimilate into our culture and live by our standards, because that is what they have to do to survive. But we don't often think about what we lose because of that. Yes, we lose powerful occult artifacts, but we also lose history. We lose culture and knowledge that could have been used to help us understand more. The Hallowed have been working with the Yinthu Tribe to prevent this. They've approached the Banu al-Ri to seek help. They're hopeful that the al-Ri will be able to help the Yinthu Tribe acclimate to a nomadic desert life. They are already a nomadic tribe, though they're more accustomed to the grasslands. It will likely be a big change for them, but they might still be able to maintain much of their culture that way. They already agreed to help, though they will not be showing them how to tame the great rocks they ride. I, for one, am hopeful this will be a fruitful venture. It doesn't seem as though the unraveling is going to end anytime soon. So if we have a way of preserving the culture of tribes displaced by this chaos, I am excited. Perhaps I will have good news of this later, but for now, I bid you farewell. This account is now entered into the record of the Hall of Echoes. Some of what you have heard tonight is confirmed. Some remains disputed. All of it has been preserved because silence too alters the future. The Hall of Echoes continues its work through those willing to support the preservation of testimony, field reports, and recovered records from lands already sleeping beyond reach. Those who wish to patronage future reports may do so through the library's public ledger at patreon.com/Echoes of Aporia. And if this account proves worth remembering, carry it with you. Speak it clearly. Repeat it faithfully where knowledge is needed. The Hall exists so that truth may travel further than silence. I am Idris Nahir, Keeper of Echoes for the Library of Zahra.
No great stay, no new homes where third sides play, no great heroes, no last stand. Leave the place, take who you can. First you watch and second you go. Third you never choose to know. The world warns off before it screams. It eats the bold who miss the seams. Those who listen, live and tell songs of places that fell to hell.